Hello, my name is Robert Manzanares. Um, I live in South Florida. Been in law enforcement for approximately 30 years altogether. Um, I started as a Department of Corrections probation officer in and around 1987. Um, Worked until 1992, where then I was recruited by the Federal Probation Office, and I worked there for 9 years, and I was recruited again for the Department of Transportation Office of Inspector General. After 5 years there, I was once again recruited by Homeland Security, and I ended my career there from 2007 to 2016.
Okay. And Robert, can you give us a little bit of background of growing up and what kind of led you to law enforcement, if there was anything?
Yeah, so when I graduated from high school, said to myself, what am I going to do? So obviously I went to a community college, and that's where I started becoming a little bit more interested in law enforcement because their training program was at the college. And I kind of liked what I saw. So I started looking at applying for different police officers' position. Unfortunately, I didn't have an education. I didn't have a degree. I don't know that that was necessary back then. Obviously, times have changed. But one of the things that was a hindrance to me was um, my command of the English language. I was a very shy, introverted kid when I was young. I always wanted to please people. I never wanted to be that person that people were talking behind my back. And I recognized while I was like that kind of person and people would say things to me, I just remember tossing and turning in my bed all night saying, man, I should have said something, but I didn't. And the first time someone did say, and I said, well, I'm going to stick up for myself, I slept better that night. And from that point, and I want to say I was about 21, 22 years old, I've pretty much become the person that I am today. So I had a few friends that applied for police officers, and I said to myself, you know what? I want to try to do that. I liked the whole idea of helping your community, being someone who was a public servant, having a career, having something that one day I might be able to retire with a retirement, health insurance, all the benefits that maybe when we were young we didn't really look at, but as you go on through the system and in law enforcement, it's something that most people don't have anymore, is a retirement. And so when I started applying for these positions, one of the things that was my hindrance was I didn't do very well in the interviews, the panel interviews, and because of that, I was never hired. And so as I was going through school, I had met a detective, and he was about 50 years old, and I'm like, why are you here? And he says, don't make the stupid mistake like I did. Get your degree first before you become a police officer. He says, because once you leave high school or wherever, it's very, very tough to have to go back to college. So that kind of made a lot of sense. He said to me, there's always going to be police positions there. So get your degree first. But nonetheless, I still applied for different agencies. And there was one agency that I remember. Um, After my interview, I was told that I didn't make it. And I was tremendously upset about it. And so I had a friend who knew one of the people that were on the panel. And I guess this is the most poignant part. My biggest kick in the gut was he said to me, and I had told him that I was in school and majoring in criminal justice. And he said, you know, maybe you ought to consider a different occupation. And I never forget that. And that's got to be, what, over 30, 40 years ago? I still remember that today. I use that as fuel for people who closed the door on me all those years so that I can become the person and the investigator that I was and that I am. So after college, I had a tough time in college, and unbeknownst to me, I had a learning disability. And the way that I know it today is because both of my children have a learning disability, and it's heredity. And so I just didn't get things quickly. I had to go over it again and again and again in order for me to retain information. So that was always a hindrance. I was on academic probation while in college. It took me actually 6 years to get my bachelor's degree because I had to struggle with not taking that many classes so that I can focus on, 2 or 3 classes at the same time, opposed to 4 and 5 classes. So after graduating college, I kind of shied away from the police, and a lot of it was based on what that gentleman had said to me. And so I was home one day reading the newspaper, and I went into classifieds, and I saw that there was a position for a state probation officer. So that was in and around 1986, 87. And so I applied for the position, and I got a call back fairly quickly. They interviewed me, and they asked me to step outside. Someone came in, they said, "You passed the interview, we want to hire you." So that's where my first law enforcement position came in. It was with the state of Florida. There wasn't a tremendous amount of money that state probation officers made, but it was a stepping stone. And so from there, I was recruited into the federal probation office. There, I did a lot of high-end supervision, former judges, money launderers, attorneys, former prosecutors, I said judges before. Actually, there was even an individual who had his own cult, and he was the leader of the cult. And when he came out, I mean, the news media was just going crazy over it. And so I also did a lot of supervision of corporations. I'd rather not say who that was. There was a cargo airline, there was a cruise ship company that had done some stuff back in the day, and they were under my control, under my supervision. Police officers, I supervised. It was a fantastic way to learn interviewing techniques. And as an investigator, and I tell all the young kids, everything that you do every year, you should take an interview course, because that is a skill set that only you can build up. No one can help you but yourself, and you do it by practicing what you're reading in interviewing people, and techniques, and how people's eyes move, how they shift around in the chair. So that was always my bread and butter, because I was able to utilize my ability to interview someone, and rightly so, I had a lot of confessions. because I minimize what they did so that they would feel better about themselves. But so long as I got the admission, I was golden.
So, Robert, can you kind of explain for people that don't know, what does a probation officer do, and was there any difference between the state system and the federal system?
Oh yeah, the state system, you probably had a caseload of about 130 individuals, where in the federal system you had a caseload of about 50 or 60. And the reason being is because federal offenders are uh, they're smarter, they're greedier, they had been in prison for a while, and now they're coming back, and the only thing that they know is crime. So you had to monitor not only where they lived, what employment they had. You had to be real specific about, drug use. We used to go to people's homes, and here we had a little canister or plastic bottle so that they can pee, and bring that back and and test it. So yes, the other thing at the federal level, where it wasn't so much like at the state level, is financials. We had to analyze tax returns every year. And so I liked the money aspect of that. I enjoyed looking at money, bank statements, and that's where my passion became more into the money crimes than your normal state or local, possession of cocaine, traffic infractions, domestics. I didn't want to do anything in that arena. And the state level, it's an entry job. Most people use it as a springboard to somewhere else. That's exactly what I did with it. It was a great learning tool for me. It made me a better communicator and a better interviewer.
So, but can you explain what's the purpose of probation?
Well, these are individuals who have pled guilty to a certain crime, and a judge imposes a probation sentence on them. And basically, 2 or 3 year probation period, they have to remain very squeaky clean, not associating with other convicted felons, do not get arrested, you have to work, you have to pay a cost of supervision to the state. So after my state duration, which again, I think I said it may have been close to 5 years, I was recruited over to the federal side. The federal side is, you're dealing with more sophisticated offenders, and the same thing that you did at the state level was more heightened level at the federal system. They mandated you see these guys twice at their homes, at their jobs, urinalysis, reviewing their monthly supervision report, looking at the checks that they received from their employer, because we wanted to see lifestyle as well, how much money you're making, and is it within your means to be, I want to go on vacation. Well, where are you getting money to go on vacation? So everything was more scrutinized because the federal offender, it was a different level. And once again, it was just a positive experience, because I was dealing with these high-level individuals, and it just made me a better communicator, a better interviewer, and that's where someone came over and said, hey, listen, do you want a job with us? And so I had the Department of Transportation, Office of Inspector General, they came in, recruited me. It probably took about a year before they hired me. I get, everything was where the positions were available. And I certainly did not want to move anywhere, because I had just had a kid, my daughter, and there was no way I was going to move to another part of the United States. So if the position wasn't here, I wasn't going to take it. I probably would have finished my career out of the U.S. Probation Office, but I didn't. When I started working for DOT or Department of Transportation, I did extortion cases, but one of the things that I enjoyed doing was the corruption cases, domestic corruption cases, and was able to indict quite a few people throughout my time that I was there, from former politicians to driver license examiners, and a bunch of other host of crimes in which the Department of Transportation had a purview of those crimes. So from there, I was doing a case with Homeland Security or Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and one of the agents there said, you know, Robert, what the hell are you doing over here? Why don't you come and work for us? And so I said, well, you know, these guys aren't bad, but, you know, I like the options. So he says, I'll introduce you to somebody. I'll show them what you did on the work, on cases that I was working on, that I utilized them to come in. And they wanted to hire me.
So before we go on, from 2002 to 2007, you worked for the Department of Transportation, Office of Inspector General. During that time, you and I had talked about a couple cases that you worked on. Can you kind of maybe talk a little bit about the commercial driver's license case?
Sure. So I want to say it was in and around 2008 or 9. There was a big indictment in South Florida on moving companies. DOT joined up with the FBI and did this massive case where we arrested over 17 different corporations and over 70 individuals. And what they would do is an individual, let's just say hypothetically, is moving from South Florida to Boston. They call the company up, they tell the company, this is what I have in terms of, you know, furniture, and the company would give them a lowball estimate, because what their scheme was, give them the lowball estimate, hook them. Once the furniture got into the truck, well, guess what? That price, and if they quoted you $1,800, now became $18,000. And now, if you didn't come up with the money, you weren't going to get your furniture back or your belongings back. And most of the time, police were called by the victim, and the officers would basically say, look, this is a civil matter. But what made it a federal matter was when those trucks left Florida to another state. Now you had the interstate commerce violations. You had the extortion violations. So that was a great case. I was happy to have assisted on it. I certainly wasn't the lead agent. But one of the things that I did learn from that case is I want to, you know, say that she was my mentor. And what she taught me was money laundering. And what she taught me was you got to look at the canceled checks. All the checks, because when they're writing out a check, if it's over $10,000, now we have our money laundering violation. And that was something that always stayed with me. Review the checks, review the checks, review the checks. So when we were interviewing these individuals who were transporting all the furniture from one state to the next, I had happened to ask one of the guys, I'm like, how did you learn how to drive a truck? And he said, it was on-the-job training. So here you have individuals driving these massive tractor trailers, never had any training. Not only that, but they were all illegal in the United States. So that was the way that they made money. And but they were putting the public at risk because they didn't have any safety training on driving a truck. So once that occurred with this particular person, I said, well, how'd you get your, the driver's license, your CDL? He said, I bought it. Well, how did you buy it? And then he told me the scheme of there was another person who was Israeli. He knew one of the driver license examiners, and that's how they circumvented the system. They would go, the bad guys would go into the driver's license bureau, and they knew because they saw her picture. So the middleman would show them the photograph of the driver's license examiner, and he said, this is the lady who's going to call you, and she may call you out of line. And guys went up there. She indicated on the driver's license that the person was a U.S. citizen and that he had passed a course for obtaining a commercial driver's license. So I believe after that we had arrested 5 different driver's license examiners who were receiving kickbacks for individuals who were not legal in the country to not only get a driver's license, but also to get a commercial driver's license. So with that case being done, obviously I used immigration back then, ICE, and they recruited me. And they said, look, why don't you come over here? So I applied and I was hired. I first went into a money laundering group. I did a case there involving cigarettes being shipped from the United States to England without the proper taxes that were assessed on it. It was the load was covered up by wood panels with attic insulation, and we did a controlled delivery. One of the issues with that case was that the cigarettes, because they were stolen cigarettes, you can buy or you can sell all those cigarettes to individuals in other countries without paying the tax on it, but individuals who were, for example, the real IRA were obtaining the cigarettes, and they were funding their arsenal with all the dirty cigarette money. So that was an interesting case. The individual was found guilty, went to prison, and then I was recruited by one of the supervisors in HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, because they were looking for someone who had corruption experience. And my level of corruption experience was only at the domestic level. But they were in a group called Kleptocracy. And the kleptocracy are individuals, or the kleptocrats are individuals who held a political position in another country, would steal from that country and bring the money into the United States. And so there was a case that there must have been eight or nine different agents that had it before. It was the joke among the group as to who's got the Obiang case. Well, what happened, I was working another case, and something very embarrassing happened with the Obiang case, because the former agents, they prepared PowerPoint presentations, and they included grand jury information on those PowerPoint presentations and presented it to another country. When that country decided that, you know what, we're not going to investigate this, all that information became public. And so the New York Times got their hands on the PowerPoint presentation. And I wasn't a case agent at the time. And you just saw people running up to the third floor because that's where management was. You know, how the hell did you let this guy, let this information get out? Grand jury, grand jury. It was bad. So my boss asked me to come into the office, into his office. He said, "Hey, shut the door." So I'm saying to myself, "Oh shit, what did I do?" He says, "Look, man, I'm going to need you to take over this Obiang case because the guys, in the group, it's just a little bit above their head. So see what you can do with it." So I said, okay. First thing I looked at when I got that case was reading all the reports that all the other agents had written up. And I went into the grand jury room and I started going through all the canceled checks. And bingo, I found something that was local. It was a boat trailer. And I'm like, well, why would he have a canceled, not a check going to a boat trailer here in Florida? So I went and met with the individual who the check was written out to. And he said to me, he says, "Oh, you're talking about the prince, are you?" And I'm like, "The prince? I don't know who you're talking about." "Yeah, the guy from Africa." He says, "You need to go up to Fort Myers because he bought multiple boats." So he told me the name of the company up in Fort Myers. I called them, let them know who I am, what I wanted. I was going to be sending a subpoena, and I wanted all the financial documents as to how they paid for the boat. Each boat, there was 2 of them, all worth about $2 million, had helicopter engines in it. So the boat could travel at least 200 miles an hour. Don't know why somebody needs that, but I guess when you're stealing from your own country, you can buy whatever you want. Obiang had a multi-million-dollar mansion in Malibu, California, sitting over the Pacific Ocean. He bought that in cash. He had a plane. He bought that for $36 million. He paid that in cash as well. And this is all on an individual who made $100,000 a year as a minister in his country. The wealth was just, and the numbers just didn't add up. So while I was up at the boat company, picking up and retrieving all that information, started engaging in a conversation with one of the females that worked there. And she said to me, "We got the glove." And I said, "What's that? What are you talking about? I mean, I'm here for the boat. Why are you talking about a glove?" She says, "He got the glove. He got the Michael Jackson sequence glove." And I'm like, "How do you know that?" "Well, his assistant was bragging about it." And I got home that day. First thing I did was get on YouTube, and I found the video of Obiang's assistant bidding and winning the sequence glove that everybody knows about. I remember then calling the prosecutor, and I said, "You're not going to believe this." I said, "Are you ready?" I said, "He bought the Michael Jackson sequence glove for close to $200,000 at auction." So there's that pause right there. And I'll always say this, it's always been my position, that made the case so much sexier. Because as someone once said, everybody wants a piece of Michael Jackson. And so From there, I said, well, I got to find out from the auction house. What did they do? How are they involved? So I called up the owner, explained who I am, what I was. I told him I'm interested in the Michael Jackson glove. I needed all the emails, how it was paid for, the check, everything. And he was rightly concerned. And he's like, do I have any exposure here? Do I need an attorney? And I told him, look, the only time you need an attorney is if you decide to lie. Because if you lie, and I always told people that I interviewed, I always said the same thing and still do it today. When you tell the truth becomes your past. But when you lie, the lie becomes your future. Don't lie, because I'm coming. So during that conversation with him, he says to me, well, Robert, this is a good paying client. Do I have anything to be concerned with? And I was puzzled by that comment. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, aside from the glove, are there other things that he purchased through your auction house? And there was a deaf, quiet period right there. It was that pregnant pause. And I said, you know something? You don't need to answer that question. I'm going to expand the scope of my subpoena. When that subpoena came back with all of the stuff that Obiang purchased, it was well over $3 million in Michael Jackson memorabilia. So it was a great case. He ended up settling and giving the government his home. There's been a book that was written about my work. And I've been interviewed a few times on a podcast for the case. I do the presentation to NYU about kleptocracy to the students at the law school. And so there just came a point in time where I was deciding, what am I going to do after all of this? And I kind of I knew that I could not go work for a company. I knew I could not take any more guidance, and I'm using those words very, very loosely. I'm not going to work for anybody anymore. I'm going to work for myself. And I opened up a private investigative company, and that's been since 2017 till today. And it has been, without a doubt, the best career move I ever made. And being to help people who are probably at their lowest level and having them, crying and please help me, been able to do so. I've been successful at it. And I just have to believe that the reason why I am doing so well in this arena now is karma. I never, and throughout my career, ever tried to do something, backstab somebody, but it was done to me. But it made me a stronger person, and I'm fine with it. Now that I'm in this arena, people come to me again because they've been criminally charged, domestic type of cases, the marriage infidelity type of cases at a very, very high level. And so I can probably give you an example of an individual that I helped, and it's probably my proudest case. And it was a lady in New Jersey. Her husband was cheating on her with one of his subordinates from work. The female and her family moved to Florida, and he followed suit. So they got divorced, and during the divorce proceedings, my client, she was the breadwinner. And she was ordered to pay $95,000 a year for the next 10 years, and she wasn't getting any child support. So one of the attorneys that I work with contacted me through some other person. Hey, can you help this lady out? So I said, sure. I gave her a great rate because I just wanted to work. And I spent 11 months on the case, between going up to the house, verifying that she did not live with her parents, verifying that she lived with my client's ex-husband. I videotaped her walking the dog, taking the trash out, bringing the trash in. And one of the things that I did on at least a monthly basis or twice a month were garbage pulls. Garbage pulls is, once you put your garbage outside, that's abandoned property. And I pulled the garbage, threw it in my truck in the middle of the night, came home, went to sleep, got gloves, opened up all the garbage. Let's put it like this, not a lot of people like doing that, but the amount of information that you can garner from garbage pulls is just unlike anything you ever thought. People throw things in their garbage that they never think that someone's going to pull that garbage. I have fake Instagram accounts. She had a private account. I was able to get into her account. One of the things that kind of struck me was that she was posting pictures of a new dog that she bought. And his name was Winston. I won't forget that. And when I was doing the garbage pulls, what did I find? The pee-pee pads for a dog. One of the last things towards the conclusion of the case, I was out doing the surveillance, videotaping her, and when I went onto my iPad, all the Wi-Fi signals that were in the area popped up. And one of the Wi-Fi was Winston. With all that, armed with all the information that I was able to obtain, the attorney went back to court to modify her $95,000 a year award that went to her husband for the next 10 years. And there was a full evidentiary hearing, which I wasn't participating in. And at the conclusion of the hearing, the judge did find a prima facie case and based on cohabitation, and removed the $95,000 alimony that her husband was going to receive. And in conjunction with that, the judge also ordered that now he have to pay child support. So nonetheless, when my client called me after the hearing, she was so ecstatic. She couldn't thank me enough. And it just really brought a sense to me that, wow, I was able to do this for this lady. So there you have it. This was a tremendous relief for me that she was able to reverse a judge's initial opinion about how much she should have to pay for alimony. And I still stay in touch with her today. And that was now 5 years ago. And to me, that's although I've done a lot of other cases in helping people, that's the one that's most memorable to me, because this was a common person, a hardworking lady with a son. I have obviously other clients who have the wealth that things are not going to affect them, but that affected her. And now I was able to remove close to $1 million that she would have had to pay on her alimony to her husband.
So a question for you, Robert, which is, so you had a good career in law enforcement, and then you started this private investigative agency, and you and I have talked about this. You really look fondly at the private investigative agency as your why, right? So what makes it so important to you as opposed to what you did with law enforcement that was also important?
Well, I believe it's fairly simple. When you're working for the government, you're working for somebody else. Okay, there are people who want to ride your coattail. You make a big case, all these people from upstairs want to come downstairs and run around with the white flag. Look what we did. Look what we did. And I didn't care because that's the normal transgression with people in management. They all want to be with the winner. I get it. So now, since I'm on my own, I'm the person benefiting from these cases. I'm the one who did it. I don't have anybody having to run around with a white flag saying, hey, we won, we won, we won. Those small things in helping other people, that means so much to me. I'll share this with you. So one night I was watching television and a saying by Mark Twain popped up. And the saying said this: the two most important days of your life, it's the day that you're born and the day you find out why. I had chills up my body when I read that. It was so profound. And it struck me. It's what I do today is my why.
One final question for you, Robert. Getting back to your law enforcement. How did being in law enforcement affect not only your family life, but how you view people out in society?
Well, I have to tell you that my friend life, so to speak, are still with the same guys that we hung out 40 years ago. I've met a few people along the way that you're always at an arm distance, unfortunately, with people because of the way our society is. But one of the things I've always tried to do is accept the person for who they are. Most people will show their ugliness in time. And so when I meet new people and they do certain things, I say to myself, you know what? I don't want to be aligned with this person. So I walk away from those type of relationships. If they're causing drama, if they're talking about other people within the group, the rule of thumb is if they're talking about other people, they're talking about you. So to that extent, my friends who have been my friends for close to 40 years, we're very, very tight. New people that I've met along the way have been great, but I'm always in the back of my mind looking at, trying to analyze, why does this person want my friendship? Do they want some type of benefit from it? Or is it just genuine? And let me tell you, there's a lot of people that are just genuine. They're good people out there. And there lies the difference between being in the government and now in the private sector. I have met so many wonderful people over the last 7 years than I met in government life. So how it has affected me, I can't put a finger on, has it affected me? No, but as I get older, I see myself becoming a little bit more reclusive. I don't want to go out. I enjoy being home. I enjoy doing other things as well, but my life is not, oh, we got to go out this weekend. We got to go do this. We're going to go here. That's not me. Oh, I want to go to a concert. I don't go to concerts. I don't like to be around big crowds. And you had asked me, how did it affect me when I was at working for the government? Well, I traveled a lot, traveled the world, and I would miss my kids' first day of kindergarten. I would miss a birthday. So, but my wife, she was excellent with me. She knew what I was trying to do on a case that had so much public insight. Why this man? I think I termed Obiang the poster child of kleptocracy. I think it's still kept today, and but she understood, and to me that was so beneficial. But at the same time, I was missing my kids' baseball games, basketball games, because that's what a father does. He attends all that. So, and when I retired, I had told my kids, oh, I'm going to be there for all your baseball games. I'm going to be out there practicing with you. So I don't find the level of stress having to have traveled all over, not being around by my kids, but they knew, and they all knew, hey, daddy's leaving. I'll be home in 4 days. I'll be home in 5 days. But I'm not here. I'm in another country, so you can't call me because of the time change. So the thing that I could say, if I did not have the family support, I don't know if I could have done what I've done. And that's the bottom line. My wife never said, hey, you got to stop all this traveling. She never said it. She knew that there was a goal that was, that I was trying to make. And I mentioned to you that this one case, there were 8 agents before me that couldn't get it done. But I did. And I have one person to thank about. That sergeant who told me that I ought to look for another line of work or another career.
Robert, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This has been Reasons We Serve, a channel dedicated to the women and men in law enforcement. Please like, share, subscribe, and leave comments. Reasons We Serve can be found on other audio platforms to include Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. If you would like to watch these interviews, they can be found on YouTube, Rumble, Vimeo, and Spotify.